Now, I mentioned earlier that it was, I think in the very first thing, it talked about factors other than 1 and -1. And then I said that even though that's the definition, we are going to use -1 sometimes. So looking at this problem, I don't see immediately what I can take out of both. I just don't see it. The only thing I notice is there's an x on the top, an x on the bottom, a 4 on the top, a 4 on the bottom. If I can get them in the right order, maybe those will cancel each other out. So I've got an x minus 4 on top and a 4 minus x on the bottom. If it was x minus 4 on the bottom, then I would be able to simplify that out. I'm going to do that by doing this. I'm going to leave the top alone. Down here, I'm going to take out a -1 because it's going to end up changing it the way I want it to. So if I say -1 times what gives me +4? Well, that would be a -4. So -1 times -4 equals a +4. Then if we say, okay, -1 times, well, I'm, -x, then it's just a -1 times x. So here, I'm going to end up taking the -1 out, and I end up with a -4 plus x. Now, if I take that and I change it around, you'll notice the 4 is now negative and the x is now positive. -1 in front, positive x first, -4 second. This is one whole number. X plus -4, they're attached. Now you see you have an x minus 4 and an x minus 4. Remember, there's always a 1 on top, either in front of parentheses. So in this case, I can say, boom, these two cancel each other out. They become 1. And 1 divided by -1 is -1. So my answer is -1. Sometimes you'll see some problems where that's what you have to do, is just pull that negative out, and immediately it starts unwinding the problem so you can simplify it. Now looking at this one, I see some common things going on, and I'm seeing some of the same stuff I just saw on the top. I have this number first and the x, and usually we see it better when it's flipped around and it's a -x, and I'm wondering if I'm going to see something just like that last problem. Let's look at the top. What can I take out of 3x and 6? Okay, well, let's see, 3 times x and 3 times 2. So I can take a 3 out. Down the bottom, initially I don't see anything I can take out, but kind of looking back at that last problem, I'm going to see if I move the stuff around by doing a -1 if it helps me. So -1 times -2, because negative times a negative is a positive, 2 times 1 is 2. -1 times positive x, because negative times a positive is a negative, 1 times x is x. Okay. Now, when we go to take this out, we're going to take that 3 out, and we're left with x minus 2. We're going to take that -1 out, and we're left with -2. And we get rid of the -1, and it's a positive x. Well, look at what it does. Remember, we're going to flip it around. Here, put the -1 first, flip x minus 2. Positive x and a -2. We can change the order around if we want. So instead of -2 plus x, I can make it x, and -2 becomes -2. So this finally canceled that one out, and you're left with 3 divided by -1, which is -3. All right, so now this should be again the time where you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, things look a little different than I'm used to. And what I'm going to suggest again is that we're going to move the top around by taking out that -1, so it's in a way we're more comfortable with. So when I'm taking this out right now, 1 minus y squared, I'm going to see what happens if I multiply by 1. So to get a +1, I need -1 times -1 equals a +1. -1 times y squared gives me -y squared. So when I do that, taking out that -1, I'm left with a -1 and a positive y squared. If I change that around, I get -1 times y squared, because we could add in any order we want, minus the 1. Now it's something we're used to seeing. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to change this to -1 times y squared minus y. y to the second minus 4y plus 3. We should also notice there isn't anything else that we really can do. So that means I'm probably looking at doing a square, and I'm looking at factoring. Back in that section, chapter 5, I believe it was, 7. We make our box. Okay, so I'm just going to pretend the negative 1 doesn't exist right now because it's going to be kind of separate part of this all on its own. So I'm going to put the y squared, let's do the top. So we'll do the y squared in the first, and the last box is negative 1, and I know when I add these two together they need to equal 0. So to get negative 1 is 1 times negative 1, so we'll just make this negative 1. This spot is the 1. Y squared is y times y. So if we keep this column the same, y, and we keep this the same, y. When we multiply here, we get negative y, positive y, and when you add those together, you get 0. So we're on the right track. Now, we've got negative 1 times y plus 1, because it's a positive 1, and y minus 1. And that is completely factored. I don't have to worry about anything else. Now what I need to do is a box for the bottom. So this is important. You'll find your problems are going to take a lot more room now. You need to give it to it so that I can find your work and give you credit for your work when you go and turn it in to me. So please make sure you're showing all your steps. All right, so y squared goes here, and we know positive 3 goes here. We also know from factoring this one's negative. When I add these two together, I need to equal negative 4. So that means I've got to have some negatives going on somewhere, even though these are positive. So the way to get 3, well, I could do negative 3 times negative 1. That would give me a positive 3. And 3 times 1. Now, if I look at y squared, typically y squared is just plain y. So I needed negatives. So I'm going to try the minus 3 and the minus 1. Again, these two are going to share the minus 1. And these two are going to share the minus 3. When I multiply here, I get negative y and negative 3y. When I add these two together, it's a negative 3 and a negative 1 makes a negative 4. So I'm on the right track. So let's transfer that data up to the top problem here. Y minus 3 and y minus 1. And look at that. We have a y minus 1 in both places. So y minus 1 divided by y minus 1 is 1. And I'm left with, and I'm running out of room here, so negative 1 times y plus 1. So I'm left with negative 1 times y plus 1 on the top and y minus 3 on the bottom.